Hi Year 11, today's short summary is on the poem Kamikaze by Beatrice Garland. This is as requested by Charlie, so thank you Charlie, and we're going to be talking you through the poem, reminding you of some of the key symbols in it and what it is about. So first of all, there's the definition of a kamikaze pilot below, for if you need a little reminder, and then click on when you're ready. So in a nutshell, this is a poem about family. It's a poem about the conflict between family values and society. It is a poem about inner conflict when faced with kind of national, cultural and personal values and how they can all be in conflict together. I'm going to keep saying that word conflict because it's obviously one of our cluster words. So the poem starts off with a kamikaze pilot setting off to complete his mission as dictated by society. He is surrounded by patriotic and heroic imagery, the idea of the sunrise, the samurai sword, a one-way journey into history, but that's also juxtaposed with imagery of vulnerability, a flask of water suggesting that kind of human need for sustenance, a shaven head filled with powerful incantations. There's a real juxtaposition from the first stanza about the idea of propaganda and then kind of human vulnerability. As the pilot is in his plane flying, he then looks down and is struck by the beauty of the natural world. He sees the vibrancy of the sea in particular below, teeming with life, and that offers him a moment of realization and also triggers his own memories of his own father. The language that is used in this section is really focused on colour and movement to create a sense of wonder and, as we've already said, vibrancy, as he is possibly facing this kind of huge realisation that he's flying off to his own death. So quotations like green, blue, translucent sea, arcing in swathes, flashing, silver, swiveled, all create this real sense of beauty and majesty of the natural world. In contrast, there's a lot of fish imagery in this poem, which we'll unpack in a little bit, but we get the tuna, who is dark and dangerous. Quite a few interpretations will give you the idea that perhaps the tuna is representative of Emperor Hirohito, who was the ruler at the time of World War II. We'll come back to this in a little bit. And then finally, moved by the beauty of the natural world, perhaps realising the importance and value of his own life, the pilot flies back, but not to a welcome, loving family. Instead, we see the severity of his actions and how his family are ashamed of his choices. But the speaker arguably avoids making judgments by the end. There's a sense of, again, maybe an adult realisation that they didn't have as a child about the significance of family and the power of love and emotion. So this is a poem packed full of symbolic meanings. I've picked some images that for me just really kind of capture some of these key moments in the text. And it's just even from these particular images with the kind of like the colour saturation I find quite interesting. So at the start, we've got all of that propaganda, patriotic imagery, as we've said, embarked at sunrise, the connotations of both the verb embarked, to go off on a journey, an adventure, and sunrise, new dawn, new day, new opportunities, which seems somewhat ironic considering that he's supposed to be flying to his death. The samurai sword being a huge symbol of the honour and culture of Japan. And the shaven head full of powerful incantations. I talk about with my classes that idea of a shaven head. It might make us think of a prisoner. It might make us think of that kind of uniformity of the army, as they used to shave people's heads for that very reason, for uniformity. It might give us ideas of kind of fragility. If your hair is all shaved off, you can see the whole of your kind of like your skull essentially is exposed. So it creates this quite powerful, vulnerable image. And yet that head is full of powerful incantations. If we think about the witches in Macbeth, incantations, spells, magic. In this case, it's not magic, it's the propaganda that his society have kind of filled his mind with, have made him into, in some ways, almost like a machine of war. And that final purpose, that in that first stanza, because these are all quotations from just the first stanza, that his purpose is for a one-way journey into history. Think about again the connotations of that, the way in which that word history, one-way journey as a phrase, makes it sound as if this is something that is like special and incredible and that he should be thrilled to be carrying out. And yet we get all of those ideas of patriotism juxtaposed with the beauty of nature. I love this quotation, this simile about how the fishing boats are strung out like bunting on a green-blue translucent sea. So the idea of the bunting, something that we find in maybe like a celebration. This is a celebration of life. That green-blue translucent sea immediately makes me think about going away on holiday, something kind of like clear and gorgeous, and to really be like celebrated and admired. This then triggers a memory of his father, which he remembers being a child and waiting for his father, who was a fisherman, to come home. The irony that he as a child was waiting for his father to come home safe. That was a one-word quotation, while he himself is kind of throwing his life away. And he and his brothers built cairns of pearl grey pebbles. So that's that second picture from the bottom. A cairn is a kind of memorial when someone has died. So we've got themes of kind of like death and realisation starting to creep in. Then we get the reference to the tuna, the dark prince, muscular, dangerous. There are a lot of different interpretations going around about this. The two that I give credence to, that I kind of believe in, are the idea that possibly this tuna could be representative, a metaphor for the power of the Japanese society, as we've already said, Emperor Hirohito, and maybe the influence that he has on these men who are prepared to die for the country. The emperor is the country, so they're kind of one and the same. The interpretation that I prefer is the idea that the tuna, the fish, is the pinnacle of power in this poem. This is a poem where the kamikaze pilot should be the most powerful, but in fact it is the tuna, it is nature itself that is the most powerful thing. And in the face of this power, the kamikaze pilot can't help but feel insignificant, not in a negative way, but in a way that makes him value his own existence even more. And then finally we get that, there's so many lines we could have chosen from at the end, but we get that horrible kind of detached realisation to live as though he had never returned. So this is a speaker saying that they too learnt as children to live as though the father had never returned. And there's this absolute, for me, immense sense of sadness in this poem, that even though he made what we might consider the right choice to come back to his family, the sense of honour and like code and patriotism in Japan at that time was so strong that his family preferred to treat him as if he had died because of the dishonour that he brought on them. So in terms of some key terms and comparison poems, I think that when we're talking about the perspective in this poem, it's really, really important, and people can get quite confused. So this is told in quite a detached third-person perspective. It's being told by the pilot's daughter to her own children. A lot of the time it's told in third person. Her father embarked at sunrise, which creates this sense of distance between the daughter and her father. But then at certain points, her first person narrative voice intrudes into the poem, maybe suggesting, we're going very Englishy here, maybe suggesting that as she's grown up into an adult, she's realised that the way that they treated her father was wrong. And then by the end of the poem, we could say that there's maybe more of a tone of acceptance rather than detachment. Maybe she comes detached from the kind of cultural philosophies that caused her to lose out on that time with her father when he came back and was alive. I realise that that's all quite, as I said, kind of Englishy, so take that however you want to take that. What poems could we compare this to? I think this is a really, really good poem if we're looking at ideas about the effects of conflict, both on individuals, on families, so we can compare it to something like Poppies. If we were going to think about the effects of conflict, or maybe like reality of conflict, then we could compare it to Charge of the Light Brigade, Bayonet Charge, maybe Remains, War Photographer. If we're thinking about like the power of society or propaganda, I was also thinking Charge of the Light Brigade and Bayonet Charge, and anything to do with like internal conflict, those first person poems where we can see the soldiers feeling internal conflict. So something for me like Bayonet Charge and Remains would work really, really well there. Now, for this poem, I feel like there is a lot of historical context that we can link it to. So I'd really recommend this just short, it's 8-minute video on YouTube. It's called The Last Kamikaze, Japanese Veterans of the Second World War. And I think it's incredible to watch and see these, like, obviously real life people, but talking about their experience kind of 40 years later, and the impact that it had on their life, obviously as kamikaze pilots who survived for a variety of reasons. So I would really encourage you to watch that. And then finally, as always, here is our knowledge organiser. Massive thank you to Mr. Stuart Pryke for these, which are really helpful. I'm going to try and keep this under 10 minutes. So as always, guys, thank you for watching, and please feel free to give this a like or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you. Bye.